Question, especially for Becca, who used to do social media. What is the correct spelling of canceled?
Cancelled.
Is it one L or two L's?
I like the Canadian version where there's two.
Yeah, I just noticed that a lot of tracks do the one, and I'm like, I don't know which one is the correct one.
There's two versions. One's Canadian, one's American. I like Canadian better.
Okay, interesting. Welcome back, everyone, to the Track Packers podcast for episode 11 of season 2. We finally threw the first green flag of the 2023 season this past weekend. We're excited to break down what we saw with a full cast, as usual, with myself, Mason, along with John, Becca, and Jessup Collinsworth-Pelkey. So the full standard crew here breaking down episode 11. We want to thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to all the new followers of the Track Packers podcast. We got a lot of compliments this last weekend, and so thank you so much for the support. If you're just checking us out for the very first time, be sure to like and follow our page on Facebook. You can check us out on YouTube as well. Or if you are just a listener, Spotify, Google, and Apple is where you can subscribe and find us. And if you leave a 5-star review on Apple, Mr. Jessup has to read it live on one of our episodes. So I encourage you, leave a 5-star review because we want to see what you come up with.
Remember, kids, I'm here to lead, not to read. So this is a treat for you guys if you can actually do this.
Well said. Well said. We also want to thank our presenting sponsor in 2023, Hitch Harness, and Mr. Tyler Hall out of Fertile, Minnesota. He developed the Hitch Harness as a very innovative project, along with Clear Arc Industries, to focus on two main aspects that you may experience as a truck owner. The first aspect is safety. You want the receiver hitch to be stored safely in the back of the truck so it's not loosely rolling around in the back of the truck bed during travel, or even in some cases fly freely through the air or into the truck itself during an accident or very bumpy road. So safety is the first part. Second one is efficiency. With the hitch harness located right inside the truck lid, it's easy to access. You can have a quick switch out of your receiver hitches so you can move from one project to the next. And so if you head over to hitchharness.com, they have a bunch of colors, different styles to choose from so you can find whatever fits your needs. They also have chassis dollies up there for you race car drivers. So you want to make life easier working on the car in the shop for maintenance and things like that. So keeping tabs on their website. Go like their Facebook page as they have a lot of promotions that they do throughout the year so you can get a good deal, or just contact Tyler. So thank you once again, Tyler, for the support of the podcast. So we have the same lineup as last week. We actually did have a caution, but I kind of put blame on all of us because we kind of shared a scheme of a driver.
I definitely put blame on, Becca herself. She just led me into that caution, and it was just miserable.
How? Jessup sent you the link.
Hold on.
Yeah, but
Mason,
you're married by association.
Mason, just so everyone knows, our group likes to, whenever we see a cool looking paint job or a wrap job or a new one, we usually send the post throughout our little group chat. And I saw a cool looking car, and I said, wow, that looks different for the year. Didn't say who it was for, and
we made our assumptions.
Everyone assumed, and that, you know what that means, folks. They made an ass of themselves, not me. They assumed that it was Dave Moss. And yeah. I did not say anything about Dave Moss. So this caution goes to everyone who brought up Dave Moss and not me.
And I will take full responsibility for this.
Thank you.
As I was the one that directly came through and assumed it was Dave, since Dave was the one that actually physically posted the video of it. that went through on his page and just made that assumption. So, yep, it was definitely on me. However, the paint scheme was very cool.
It
Nate's
was.
paint scheme now
It
this year
was.
is also very cool for his late model. So yeah, so I think we'll move forward with that. But with that being said, that was a non-void caution, so I still start on the pole.
I was going to say, even if you went to the back, you're probably going to end up in the front in like 2 or 3 weeks anyway, at the rate we go.
So,
I mean, like a week.
can we just quick talk about a few paint jobs? Just because I got really
Yes.
excited. There were two that
Yes.
really stood out this week. They came from Kelly Lake, Minnesota, along with Derek Vessel's late model. That looks really sharp. No, John, it's not where you're gonna cut your hand on it, but it's sharp as in it's very
Nice looking.
yes. The other ones I thought were really
Vibrant.
good were Skeeter Estes late model. That thing looks really cool this year. It's black and red, and the color pattern's really different for like the scheme looks very different for our area. So I think that one looks really cool. And then I believe it was Kelly's modified
Yep.
looks really sharp too. That thing
It's different.
it's different for him.
Definitely different.
And different for our area. Because I think areas like regions tend to fall into trends of what one person has, and then it often gets kind of patterned around that. These are two very different schemes and different wrap designs, and I can't remember who did it for them, but they did a really nice job.
Yeah. Yeah. Those were some really nice schemes too. Yeah. We slowed down on the sharing of paint schemes this week just because racing was coming up. Otherwise, our feed would have just been blown up with all the new paint schemes because there's some really good ones, which we may touch on a couple more throughout the episode about since we actually have racing to talk about. We're going to be focusing on that for this episode. But checking in with the crew real quick, Mr. John Breckel, how are you doing this week?
I am doing great. So we got our first night of racing in for the season where all of us were at the same track. And then Mason went north of the border for the first time in a couple of years to attend a race up in Estevan. And the nice thing is too is that Mason, all of us were also watching during that racing event as well. So that was kind of nice to see. But yeah, no, it was really nice on that one too. Saturday, Sunday here were definitely more of the cooler / rainier days, and it's been kind of rainy this week too. But going forward, it looks like weather obviously has definitely warmed up. Opening nights look like they were quite successful at several tracks, and it's nice to have the green flag finally dropped on actual racing here within the North Dakota and state region. So I think that was really nice to see.
Absolutely, yeah. It was nice just to see cars on the track to start with too. I'm sure you got to experience Test and Tune last week, but yeah, seeing cars on the track was just like, all right, we're ready to go. We're ready to start racing. So, Jessup, how are you doing this week?
Pretty good overall. It's been a busy week. A lot of good things, a lot of highs, not very many lows. So that's got to be a good thing in life, right?
Exactly. I agree with that. Good deal. Miss Beck, how are you doing?
Good. It feels so good to be back at the track. The weekend was cut a little short for us because, as John mentioned, there was a little moisture on the end of the weekend. But that's probably because Mason was in the area. So we'll forgive you, Mason.
Thing.
Yeah, I mean it rained, these past few days, but that's because Mason was driving back home to Fargo, so he brought the rain with him. Made it hail in Bismarck, Mandan, so added moisture for this weekend. But yeah, I'm enjoying the nicer weather. Went outside today and did some weed pulling and whatnot in the backyard. Played with the dog and the cat. And unfortunately, it won't be quite this warm this weekend. But fingers crossed, the rain stays away and we can go racing again yet this weekend.
So I've determined that I'm basically the Ross Chastain of dirt track racing. Pretty much just blame Mason for any cancellation.
I don't think that's
similar, so
I don't think that's an accurate comparison. While the blaming part may be true, you can't fight. You're too nice.
How do you know?
You're way too.
Would you punch someone if they got in your face? Because I don't think you would.
No, I don't know if I would. I could run them. I could outrun them. That's for dang sure.
So
no,
you're
Mason,
more of
you're
a
gonna hurt me
chaser.
now.
Chastain does not run away. He punches people.
He tells them to stop nicely twice, and then he pops them in the face.
That was
He
great.
did not run away.
That
It was great.
absolutely
It was awesome.
I would have wanted to see what would happen had that security guard not been there to stop Noah. Oh well, I guess
God,
we'll
that
never
haircut
know.
is so
But
ugly.
The
I'm doing
haircut is
good.
terrible.
I thought the racing this weekend was excellent. I thought NASCAR was fun. It gave their fans something to talk about. And it was just an all around very intriguing race to watch.
Yeah, it definitely made up for like a Sunday where there was really no racing to be had or to be seen. So yeah, thankfully NASCAR was there to fill the void. But yeah, I got
You know
to
what
go to a few racetracks this last weekend, and it was a really good weekend just being at the track. And it's a little overwhelming, just kind of trying to catch up with everyone and just running out of time. Of course, it's opening night, and there's so much stuff that you want to do, and so many people you want to say hi to. But we'll get into the racing action here. But let's wave the green flag and have the official start of episode 11. We'll get right into who or what are we repping. Mr. John Breckel, who or what are you repping for this episode?
Well, I decided to go a little bit different route today.
Oh.
So, my last couple of shirts have been more Stampede related for maybe like the early 2000s, somewhere within that range. So today, I decided that since we have started racing season, that maybe we should go now into the later 2000s era with the Stampede instead of the earlies. Now we've gone to the laters. So this is the 2007 Stock Car Stampede shirt for the Jamestown Speedway. So again, we're down in a history lesson. So the 2006 Stock Car Stampede winners that are on the back of this shirt were kind of unique. And the reason why I say that is because the Stampede was plagued by weather that year. The Friday night show was completely rained out. Saturday started at the normal time of 5 during that Saturday night show. And they weren't sure if they were even going to be able to get it in. And the reason why is because it was still kind of misting / drizzling in the morning when everybody woke up right around that 8 o'clock time frame. However, it cleared up. It got nice out. The wind started blowing. Track dried up, pits dried up, and they had, to be exact, 286 cars that checked into the back gate for the Stock Car Stampede that year. That was tied actually with the record until the next year hit in 2007, which we'll go through that here on a later episode, and go through from that one too. But question for all of you: who won the Bombers back on the 2006 Stock Car Stampede? Because that driver was a Dakota Speedway regular, and Becca looked it up, so Becca does not get to answer.
Oh, dang, I was good. You gave us a hint.
I know it.
This really doesn't help me.
No, it doesn't help me either.
Can I answer it?
John,
Yes,
like-
Becca, you can take it away.
Hellman.
It was the Gray Ghost of Chad Hussauer.
Oh,
That is
that makes
correct.
sense.
And that car that he ran was still in commission here just a few years ago when Chad was still out running the car at the Dakota Speedway and surrounding racetracks. And I believe he's still got that car around. So who knows? One of these days, Chad might just come back out with that Gray Ghost machine again at the Dakota Speedway and surrounding racetracks.
Yeah, it's been a little bit since we've seen him racing. At least I haven't seen him racing in a while.
It's been a couple years.
I haven't seen him at the track very often either.
No, I've
Hopefully
seen
he
Jason
comes
a few
back
times, but
around.
I haven't really
I've
seen
seen Jason, but not Chad.
Yeah, I would agree.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to get him back out. Hopefully he's watching or gets wind of this, and maybe encourage him to show up at the racetrack. That'd be cool to see. Cool. Nice trip down memory lane. I'm glad that to see that you've gotten a little newer shirt this week.
I did. I decided to go a little newer.
Great. Becca, who or what are you repping?
So over the weekend, we were chatting, and John realized that this particular year, 2023, was his 10th year at Dakota Speedway. And I had to go back and I had to count how many years I've been involved with the Dakota Speedway. And this is my 15th year. in dirt track racing. And this particular shirt is the first shirt is my first racing shirt ever. Kind of boring, but it's just a plain old Dakota Speedway event staff shirt. And this is like a 2XL. So I had to so back in the day, young Becca decided to make it super cute. So it actually fit me better instead of just swimming in this 2XL shirt. But anyways, so yeah, kind of along John's themes of going down memory lane. Yeah, I didn't realize this was my 15th season with Dakota Speedway. And yeah, this is the first shirt I ever got. And I kind of wished, I guess back then in 2008, the Dakota Speedway gave these shirts out to all the volunteers to make them look as one unified team. And I think we've tried to recreate that in the past, and it hasn't been executed very well just because volunteers don't want to wear the same thing every Friday. They show up in whatever the heck they show up in. So maybe we'll try that again in the future. I like the idea of all of our volunteers looking at as one unified team, and also makes it just easier for drivers, maybe those newer drivers who are there for the first time, or just newer drivers in general. They know who to turn to versus some guy in the corner 3 with a headset. That could be anyone, right? But
I was say it could be some guy with like a 2006 or 2007 Stampede shirt, and who knows that they're the person to talk to.
And looking quite miserable while they check in
answers.
drivers.
Yeah. So this is my very first Dakota Speedway shirt. It's my very first racing shirt from that original season. And yeah, I found this in my, I had to dig deep for this because I'm running low on the racing shirts. So I need to start buying shirts. And I'm glad racing was finally here so I can go to the track and finally buy some shirts because I'm low on the shirt department. And I don't want to do what Jessup is doing and dig through the box, which Jessup, who are you wearing this week?
Oh, well, Becca, let me tell you guys, I took some inspiration from John, and I'm going to be starting a trend. This trend is the trend of giving you, all you race fans, random knowledge of drivers that we may have never even heard of. This week, I am wearing a Terry Schultz t-shirt. Actually, it's a pretty nice little t-shirt here. Terry is from Sedalia, Missouri, and Mason, you might actually have seen this guy race before.
Did he race USMTS at all?
I don't know about that.
Doesn't know that answer.
But I know he races B-mods, and I know you're a big B-mod fan, and he's raced at Humboldt, and most of it looks to be USRA B-mods. So far, everything I've seen of his is B-mods going back to 2020. Yeah. Oh, USRA modified, so I'm sure he's had a cup of coffee with the USMTS. That's pretty neat. But this year, just going off of what we need to know now, Terry is 12 events in. He has 1 win, 7 top 5s, 9 top 10s. That's a pretty good average.
Wow. Yeah. The name sounds really familiar. I don't totally recognize it, but it does ring a bell.
Mm-hmm.
So, cool. Very unique shirt. Mason? I like that. Yes. So for who I'm repping a very familiar driver. Everyone down here will know this driver, and he had a good start to the season. The number 67 of Ryan Satter. This is a shirt from 2022, I believe. I got it from him last year. But he has a very, very sharp looking car this year. It's a throwback to one of his dad's. I don't remember what year that car was, but it's so cool. Like, if you haven't seen it, I'll post a picture of it. It's a very nice retro looking car and absolutely gorgeous. And he parked it in Victory Lane at the I-94 EMR Speedway on Friday night for their season openers. So congratulations to Ryan Satter on the win. You can also find him in an IMSA stock car throughout the season. So he'll be kind of dabbling in both of those cars throughout the season. So repping the 67 of Ryan Satter for episode 11 this week. So now we move into our first Track Packer report with racing during the bulk of the 2023 season. So I'll kind of get things primed up with test and tune from Thursday night at I-94 Speedway. About 50 to 60 cars were there, kind of shaking down their cars. So a really good turnout, a lot of different new faces in the various classes. The track was actually in really good condition. Obviously, Test and Tune's not going to be like in prime race condition, but very smooth from top to bottom. The cars were going from the bottom all the way to the top and racing all over. And so that was really encouraging to see. It was nice to just see cars on the track. Tyler Peterson gave me a welcome back to the dirt track by absolutely dune blasting me when I walked up to the top of turns 3 and 4. So thank you, Tyler Peterson, for that welcome gift. But yeah, just overall really good to see all the new cars there. There's a lot of sharp looking cars over in the Fergus Falls area. And so we'll touch on a little bit more of Fergus Falls results in just a little bit.
Listen, can you say though that Fergus had a lot of cars on Friday?
They did have a lot of cars, 133 to be exact.
John, you stole my line.
I know, I did it right in the nick of time.
Mason, I feel offended by this.
Have you filed
Aren't
the
you
official
always
trademark for
offended?
that?
I
I
should,
was just gonna say, isn't that normal?
Aren't you always offended?
because people are offensive.
Right. So moving on to Friday, where all 4 of us were at the Dakota Speedway for the season opener, which I'll start with Jessup for your takeaways. What did you take away from Dakota Speedway season opener?
I would start with John and Becca, as they were actually physically at the track more than I was. So I'm going to defer to them and then kind of fill in where I saw things.
All right, go ahead, Becca.
Sure. Yeah. So it was our first race of the season at the Dakota Speedway. Racing season was originally supposed to start in the middle of April, but Mother Nature had other plans. So I think at this point, the first weekend in May, people were just itching to go racing, and there was excitement, there was a buzz, there was a lot of just general excitement for racing at Dakota Speedway, and felt so good to be back at the track. I had a different role. I have a different role going into this particular season, so it wasn't my normal night of racing. In fact, I didn't really get to see a whole lot of racing. The typical putting out fires didn't end, even though I was doing other different roles and responsibilities throughout the night. That didn't stop. I still had phone calls and text messages and people blowing up my phone all night, but put out the fires, did all the things. But the racing I did get to see, primarily the features, was really good racing, and there were a lot of cars there, as Jessup would say. My main takeaways were I was generally impressed with how well the track held up, because just a few weeks prior, that track was completely covered in snow. Warmer temperatures obviously helped melt that snow, but as soon as the track prep crew could get on the track, they were working that track for weeks on end to get that track ready. And honestly, it was really good. They didn't have to do a whole lot of track prep that I saw. So it was very fast. It was very wide, lots of racing grooves, and that was one of my main takeaways. And then also, there was generally a lot of travelers. I'm glad to see that people came from Montana and all over just to come race. And that was just, again, I think that just feeds into the general excitement that people were just excited to go racing. So those were my main takeaways. And I know John can go through the racing results from Van Dan. But yeah, it was just a great night of week racing. We were supposed to have night 2 on Saturday, May 6th, but unfortunately Mother Nature had other plans. But that allowed some of our drivers from Van Dan to go up north and support the Estevan Motor Speedway for their season opener, which was also great car counts for them.
Yeah, just a couple solid takeaways. I agree with both of those. Yep. John, what was the takeaway or 2 you had?
Yeah, so I think overall it was really good to be back at the track. We had a pretty good not just car count, but also fan attendance. So grandstands were pretty good on Friday night too. It was nice to see familiar faces back at the grandstands as well. Talk to several people out there, stay caught up because you haven't seen them, obviously during winter time frame, people are in different activities, so maybe you haven't seen a lot of your one of your diehard fans or fans that you see each and every week over there in the grandstand. So that was kind of nice to see too, that we had a pretty good amount of people in the grandstands. But kind of to say what Becca said too, the track held up really well overall with how much snow that we had this past year in Bismarck Mandan. It was probably actually a good thing that it was probably that first week in May when we started, just because didn't get rushed. Track had time to dry out a little bit, had time to basically make sure the surface stayed pretty nice. The hardest thing, and I know a lot of tracks are experiencing this right now. A lot of promoters, a lot of track prep crews are that you don't want to start too quick. So you don't want the track to be rutted up because as soon as it ruts up, it takes forever to get back out of it. It's almost like you have to go really deep into the track and keep blading and it just gets to be a big mess. So that was nice to see that the track held up really nice and overall it was a great opening day. The other thing too that I want to say is that the volunteers, we had a lot of new volunteers in different places this past Friday night, and just from our perspective in the tower itself, and even within the draw shack, it went pretty smooth. There wasn't a whole lot of hiccups. Obviously, you still have a few hiccups here or there from opening night jitters, but the tower crew did a great job on getting everything lined up with lineups, getting cars on the track, getting everybody organized, and getting everything, good to go for the show behind the scenes, where a lot of the fans maybe don't see that directly too. The announcer system worked great, so everything else was pretty good there too. It was really nice to be back behind the mic from that. And Mason, I'll go through kind of just a couple of results here. So our car count, like Jessup and Becca had mentioned, was quite large for season opener. We had 105 cars total wise. We really had a good field of legends. Legends were at 41 drivers. I mean, that's a huge number on opening night. And in my personal opinion, the Legends put on probably one of the best shows, if not the best show of all night. And that was included within the heat races and also within the feature. So the feature event, Preston Martin picked up where he left off a little bit last year. Last year, he was second in points by a point to Donovan. Donovan Weist and Preston ended up winning with a really good battle up front between him and Donovan. And then Casey was right there too. And Austin Weist was involved in that mix. And the Martin brothers, it was almost like Talladega. They were kind of bragging on the high side. They worked that high line in during the feature event, and Preston made the passes only a few laps to go to get his first win here of 2023. So Preston won. Casey Martin had a great run in second, followed up his Stock Car Stampede performance last year with the second place over at Mandan now. Donovan was right there in third. Austin Weist was in fourth. Unfortunate for Dante Martin. Dante was actually in the top five. He was fourth when he crossed the line, but he was light at the scales. So Dante unfortunately was DQ'd there on the first night. But still, really good racing overall with the Legends. I think that class is going to be fun to watch this year. And the reason why I say that is because they literally have probably between on any given night, potentially 10 to maybe 15 drivers that can win, can truly challenge and win for as of right now for that feature event each and every night. And also you have a lot of young drivers that are coming up still that, they're basically getting their feet wet again, and they're going to be challenging for heat wins and feature wins upcoming soon too. So that class is just full of talent. I'm going to go through a couple of the other ones here too. So hobby stocks, it was nice to see John Gartner Jr. back in victory lane. He had by far the oldest chassis probably on the track, just because that car has been, built many years ago. But yeah, he rode that Mopar to victory over the rest of the field. So it was really nice to see John back in victory lane. We had 15 hobby stocks total. We had 4 IMCA Sport Compacts, but they put on a heated battle throughout the field. And right now it was Chris Yost, that was your feature winner during opening night. He actually picked up kind of where he left off last year. He was pretty strong last year on that one too. And then you have Paul Chu and Alex Thompson had a great run up there in the top 3. And your other class was the street stocks. The Wissota Street Stocks had 20 cars that showed up the first night for that feature event. Hunter Domagala, he started on the pole. Hunter's been the defending track champion, driver of the year a couple years, and Hunter, once he starts up front, it's hard to beat Hunter. And Hunter, he ended up winning, but that feature went 20 laps green to checkered, didn't have a caution. And you had 2 drivers that were tracking him down. You had Jeremy Kessler, who came to us all the way from Laurel, Montana. So Jeremy was over here on Friday night, was right on Hunter's tailgate when they crossed the start-finish line for the 20th lap. And you had Billy Christ, who was really coming towards the end of that race because he was 4 seconds behind and he caught them with 2 to go. So he tracked those top 2 down with 2 to go, and it would have been interesting to kind of maybe see if a caution came out on what Billy could do there as well. In your mods, great car counts overall within your mods too. We had 25 mods there the first night. And within the mod class in general, we had some heavy hitters. You had the dark horse Travis Hagen. You had Wayne Johnson, who was making his first appearance at Dakota Speedway in several years. It was nice to see Wayne back. you had Hank Berry, then you had your regulars of Sean Strand, Jeremy Keller, Marlon Silent, Quentin Kinsley, who have been, top four within your points in paddling for track championships over the last several years. And then you also had Big Show was back. So Jason Walla was there too in a brand new car that he just picked up 2 days prior to that down in Iowa. So Jason ended up winning. He found the high line and passed Sean Strand with right around the midway point of the race. Ended up winning that feature event, and then you had Jeremy Keller in second, Sean Strand in third. So it was a really good opening night, a lot of really great racing action, and just a good show overall. And it was nice to be back at the track, and looking forward for more weeks to come.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was really cool to see like a diverse field of cars that not only were from the Bismarck Mandan area, but like you were saying, like how many drivers traveled from all across the state. Several drivers from the Williston area, specifically in the mods, came down, and then just like a stout field of legend cars. And it's nice to see the young talents coming up there. Jessup, did you have anything additional to add?
No, I would echo a lot of what they said. The Legends feature, if you take out the cautions, it was a very interesting feature in a good way. I know when we interview, or Becca interviews John Gartner whenever he wins, he every now and then you'll get the cream rises to the top promo from him. And this was a case of that, because if you looked at the front, I don't know, 3-4 rows of that feature, there were a lot of new faces up front. So that was pretty cool to see. And they held their own. But at the same token, the veterans of that class found their groove. They found their way back to the front, and it was a good, entertaining feature on the whole. The street stock, same thing. Jeremy Castro looked really good, chasing down Hunter Damagala, and I was kind of hoping a second lane would kind of begin to form in the later stages. I would say like the last 5-10 laps of the feature. That I think that would have been kind of fun to see. But Hunter did a great job doing what he had to do. What can you say about Big Show coming back and being very dominant? But then if you look across that field of modifieds, again, we talk about the cream rising to the top, and the ones that you expect to be at the top when you think of Dakota Speedway were back in the top. And they drove their way up there. It wasn't as if they were just given this free reign to go right by everybody. They had to work pretty hard, because as John's mentioned, there was a very stacked field of modifieds there. I mean, you had Sean Strand, Jeremy Keller, Travis Hagan, Marcus Tomlinson, who happens to be Nodak's defending point champion. And if you even just keep looking through the names, you had Scotty Gartner there, the Jamestown track point champion, all the way through that field. You had a lot of heavy hitters. So that was a lot of fun to see. Wayne Johnson coming down was kind of a neat little surprise that I don't think a lot of the fans would have even imagined was going to happen. So that was cool to see Wayne come down. Outside of that, then you look at your other two classes, the remaining with the Legends. I didn't get not the Legends, but the Sport Compacts. I didn't get a chance to see that. I was putting out fires left and right, and I didn't get to see that night. But Chris Yost picking up where he left off. That was cool. And then Hobby Stocks, again, great feature. It was very interesting to see John Gartner Jr. Kind of commandingly walk away and hold off the field, and that was pretty cool, because Becca and I were out there at the Gartner compound and that Thursday night, so the night before, and there were no fenders on the car, the transmission was out, there was no hood, there was no nothing. And John was working on a little quad for his daughter, and he's like, yeah, we'll see if we get it together. And sure enough, they got it together, and that was pretty interesting. So if you look at it that way, it was a great opening night. Healthy field of cars, healthy fan count. And then the rain came in on Saturday, and washed it all out. I think that was a Mason plan.
Not so sure about that because I was nowhere near the area by that point.
Really, you were just there the night before, Mason.
Yeah, so what? I wasn't anywhere close on Saturday.
You were calling the
Where were
reins in.
you? Where were you on Sunday, Mason? Where were you?
I was in Minot all day.
Oh,
And what happened in Minot on Sunday?
Well, it rained for the morning. And then, of course, as soon as Nodak canceled on Sunday, the sun came out like an hour or two later. It would have been
Oh, no.
I mean, the track would have, I think it was so saturated by that point, it wouldn't have helped, but it never fails. Like you make a call to cancel a show and then the weather just improves so much. There was no wind. I mean, the temperature was about the same as it was probably in Mandan and Estevan, but there was no wind to go with that temperature. So I'm like, oh, this would have been such a great night to sit at the racetrack, but unfortunate. But yeah, all good takeaways from Dakota Speedway. My last thing I'd add to it, I think the shows ran really smooth for an opening night, at least from my vantage point, sitting in the stands and roaming around the pits, like clockwork. I mean, Dakota Speedway is one of the quickest, efficient shows that you'll see around the region, and they were moving through the heat races very efficiently, not a super long intermission, and the features kind of clicked off once they got through all the cautions and such. And so nicely ran show. Kudos to all the volunteers, the board, all the drivers, everyone involved to have a nice, smooth opening night. So hopefully you guys get to continue at this upcoming week. So Saturday, out east, everything was washed out, and like literally one of the only races taking place in the region was up at the Estevan Speedway, and they kicked off their season. And what was really special about this instance is it's the first time since before the pandemic. Last visit was 2019 that Americans were able to cross over the border like easier than they were the previous years. And so that brought a whole contingent of American racers, drivers, and fans. They had a car count of 70, but 20 of them were from the US side. So that's a big addition to their car count. And I know they were all really excited to see so many drivers come through the gates and some new ones that haven't been there before. I rode up with the Marcus Tomlinson team with Keaton Gurmanson and Mike Tomlinson, and literally we parked the hauler, and within like a minute, we had two of the board members come over and be like, "Oh, it's so great to see you here. We want to thank you so much for coming." Byron Victor was one of them, and I apologize, I don't remember the other gentleman's name, but they were doing that to every racer that was coming through the gates. It was really, really cool to see. They were really grateful for all the new people that have been up there in previous years, and even the fans were very, very gracious and very welcoming to all the people that showed up through the gates. So that was really cool. Before I get to my takeaways, you three got to watch it from home. So what were your takeaways watching Estevan on Saturday?
Well, the first thing I would say is the track looked really good. I haven't watched one of their season openers before, but from what I could tell, the track had plenty of tack in it, plenty of places to run. There were a couple features that were really entertaining to watch. But yeah, overall, it seemed pretty smooth when the racing was going. And overall, it's what I expect from Estevan. Good racing. I'm sure you can attest to it. Good people. And just a good time in general. You don't hear too much dramatics coming out of their track.
Yeah, they just had that one little hiccup at the beginning of the night, which the president, his name is Brad Pearson, was kind of going around and explaining to like specifically the sport mart drivers because they had an extended track packing session, so to speak. What ended up happening was, I think the bigger water truck had broken down, and so they were using a smaller one. And the person that was running it didn't have a radio and was in too low of gear when he was watering the track. So a little bit of a hiccup.
That would explain the extra long delay at the very beginning. But
yeah,
would that explain the B mods packing the track?
That would explain the B mods or the sport mods packing the track for an extended period of time. So But
I enjoyed watching from the comfort of our couch. Obviously, Mandan's night 2 of the Mandan Meltdown was rained out. So, and some of our drivers went up to Estevan to support their show. I was chatting with Byron Victor Saturday afternoon, and he was just super over the moon excited just to have the American drivers back in Estevan, and they put on a great show. Yeah, I enjoyed watching their broadcast. Great turnout, great racing action. Those guys up there know how to prepare a racing surface up there. And every time I've been to Estevan, it's been just phenomenal, just good side-by-side, hard-fought battles for the win up there. And their season opener was no different. And I'm just looking forward to my return to Estevan. Hopefully it's not hopefully we don't have to wait until the mod tour to go up there. Hopefully Jessup and I, or even John, can run up there and just go up there and watch some racing. But I can't wait for my return to go up to the Estevan Water Speedway.
well, if you go up before the mod tour, or for all those that are going up for the mod tour, I think we primed the pump for the border. I think we got the surprise visitors out of the way, because I'm sure they were a little taken aback at the border with an influx of people. It's like, whoa, what the heck is going on with all these extra people crossing the border at this one time?
Or all the big like trailers and everything else that were coming through.
Yeah, we are at the border for an extended period of time, but it was all good.
Yeah. No, I thought it was overall it was a great opener for Estevan. It was nice to see the excitement in the air. Back to have all of, the Americans that can go across the border into there and visit again. That's one thing that I think before even COVID hit, it was kind of almost like second nature to where, there for a while, it was like restricted to where nobody can get through then, for basically now almost 3 years. It's been over 3 years from that perspective. So it's something that's nice to see that it's back, back to normalcy and they can get back into, their regular shows and get back into supporting, the racetrack as a whole again. Because there for a while they struggled with even racing on a given night because they had so many rules and regulations that they had to follow up there that it just sometimes they would race only maybe a couple months at the most to try to get in a couple shows here or there. But no, that was nice to see too. One thing that impressed me too when I was watching the broadcast was, first of all, a really good stock car feature overall, but also the kind of and one of the questions, and I think the announcers actually alluded to it really well, was how were the Canadian drivers going to, kind of stack up against the American drivers that have been racing a lot more than what some of the Canadians have been able to race here over the last couple of years, and they fared really well. A lot of those track champions showed why they are track champions up there at Estevan Motor Speedway because they stepped up their game a little bit too and clicked off feature wins on opening night. So that part was pretty cool to see too. Just the mix of the drivers within the field and how that racing action was. But like Becca said, in Jessup 2, the track was really well prepared. And it was a great opening night for them up there in Estevan.
Yeah, and kind of just before I get into the results, I would say it was a really nicely put together season opener. Very few cautions. I mean, once we got going, there was very few cautions throughout the entirety of the night. So, I mean, like the show clicked along pretty dang quick and kind of like the same as it says Dakota Speedway. It would have been interesting to see if a caution would have fallen late in one of those races, what the outcome would have been, because there's definitely some movers and shakers throughout those features, and a lot of them went green to checker or pretty dang close to green flag to checkered flag without a caution. So would have been interesting to see how that would have played out. But getting into the results, starting off from the sport mods, Gabriel Deschamps got the win in front of Robbie Roselli. They had to move through lap traffic quite a bit the last several laps, and Gabriel held his own for a really good win. So congratulations to Gabriel Deschamps. Slingshots went to Brogan Wenger, the number 30. He absolutely walked the field. Like, he was gone. I was like, dang, I wish they would have said, I think they said at one point how fast the slingshots were going. I probably wouldn't have heard it there, but he had to have been clicking off some pretty dang fast laps, like hobby stock speed. Like, he was cruising in that slingshot. So big win for Brogan Wagner. Stock cars, like you guys mentioned, was probably the race of the night with Chris Hortness tracking down Adam Goff. That was a caution-free race. Got past him just coming out of the last turn, basically. And so congratulations to Chris Hortness. He mentioned that he didn't know how he'd stack up with all the Americans showing up. And so kudos to Chris Hortness. Modifieds, big show. Jason Wall doubled up on the weekend. He was pretty much in a league of his own. And so 2 wins on the weekend in a brand new car that he just got in the week prior. So that's a great start to the season for him. And Hobby Stocks went to local Connor Hansen from Torquay, Saskatchewan. He held off Brenner Gridstead, Kyle Saturn and company for the win in the IMCA Hobby Stocks. So great turnout in Estevan. Really looking forward to getting back up there. It's kind of makes me reminisce when I lived back in mine and went up to Estevan several times throughout the year. So great job to the Estevan Motor Speedway on a great season opener.
And they just announced that they are, for their next doubleheader weekend, which is in 2 weeks, the May 19th and 20th, they are doubling the purse. So if there's any IMCA modified drivers, stock car drivers, hobby stocks, IMCA sport mods, head up to the Estevan Motor Speedway because, yeah, big prize money on the line. And hopefully they have a really successful doubleheader show in 2 weeks.
And there was a lot of local drivers and even some drivers from the stateside that don't have their cars ready. I heard a lot of people that saying like, so-and-so would be here, but their cars aren't done. And so there's probably going to be even more faces that show up. And especially as the weather gets warmer, because if you ever been to a season opener in Estevan, it's always like mid 50s to low 60s and a wind, like 20-mile-an-hour wind going right into the stands. It never fails that's the season opening weather in Estevan. Just like old times. And I won't go over the results from the other 2 races in our region that ran, but I-94 EMR Speedway and Fiesta City Speedway kicked off their seasons on Friday night. So I want to send a kudos out to both of those tracks. Watched both races. The tracks were in really great condition for a season opening night. And so hopefully they'll be able to continue their seasons. They got a leg up on everyone because unfortunately, Mother Nature just hasn't cooperated anywhere else in the region, unfortunately. So moving on into what's coming up this weekend, Mr. Dakota Dirt. How is North Dakota looking for racing this weekend?
Wet.
Oh my goodness, Jessup, before you do that, you have to go in through how do people get onto Dakota Dirt? I mean,
John,
you have to check it out.
How do people find the Dakota Dirt?
Well, they're social. So they're on social media platforms. So you have to go check them out on anything social media platform based. And you can find Dakota Dirt. It is your one-stop shop. Everything North Dakota racing news, results, weather forecasts, podcast ideas, as well as news articles and race results. Check them out at dakotadirt.org. Again, they're also on a website, dakotadirt.org. That is a leg up on their competitors. So again, check them out at Dakota Dirt. They are social on social media platforms.
Thank you, John. This weekend looks like Mother Nature is going to kick everyone's butt again, as it looks quote unquote moist. Moist like
so
a
Mason's
muffin.
around then, in other words.
Yes.
The 500-mile radius of Mason or Rain Man is taking effect this weekend.
So
Ross Chastain is in the building, so
looking at this weekend, I do have to make one correction on the site. As it appears, Red River is now just a test and tune this weekend. But if everything goes good, and we got our fingers crossed, and let me just double check one more just to make sure I don't tell you good fans the wrong information. But it looks to be like another week at Dakota Speedway. Again, weather permitting. Friday could be a really fun night at Dakota Speedway again. Plenty of IMCA mods can come from the north, from the west, and specifically from the east if they want to come hang out. But I'm sure the eastern guys are going to want to do a test and tune. But that is what Friday night's looking like, along with River City Speedway. They hope to get their season kicked off in a big way. It's now or never, basically. Let me double check here on my Saturday here. Saturday, Devil's Lake is kicking their season off in a big way as well with the NLRA. So that's going to be a big event for them. I hope a lot of fans get out there, and I hope they support them. Williston also looks to kick their season off, so the West is going to have some racing action to watch as well. Sunday looks like Nodak Speedway. Hopefully we'll get their season kicked off as long as Mason doesn't go up there. And that is what the North Dakota region really looks like. Now, if we're talking about the other regions, I-94 would probably be racing again, along with Fiesta, and I believe is Brown County or is John? I can't hear you.
Brown County is doing their test and tune.
Oh,
Viking
oh,
Speedway is opening up this weekend too.
that'll be a fun night for them. Vikings and for some reason it's a fun little, not little, a fun big half-mile track. Oddly, the only times I really remember going to Viking is Becca and I's one of our first dates, and it was for the NLRA on the second night of their doubleheader for Labor Day weekend. And I just remember watching cars fly off of corner one and then just randomly come back up on corner two and launching it back out on the track. So that was always a fun time. Anyways, test and tunes within the state. It looks like Friday's going to be the Red River Valley Speedway, along with on Saturday, I think there's going to be one over at Southwest, but that may have been pushed back again.
I believe that's been pushed back. Based on what they had said, I think it's been pushed back. It's hard to keep track because they keep kind of changing every day. The other track that's in South Dakota that is starting though this weekend is Huron is having their opening night this weekend. So the Dakota State Fair Speedway, they're having 4 shows this year. So that is the track that is also having a race night on Saturday night for the South Dakota drivers and surrounding areas.
What classes are going to be racing?
So they're going to be running for sure WISSOTA Street Stocks, as well as WISSOTA Midwest Modifieds, WISSOTA Late Models, and WISSOTA Super Stocks. So those 4 classes are on the docket.
I believe the late models are like a tri-state late model race too.
It's a tri-state race, correct? Yep.
Which is a traveling series, so you're going to see some different drivers than what you normally see. So that should be a fun show to go attend if you get the opportunity.
Yes,
absolutely.
Mason, that's one track that you could go to on Saturday. So as well, because I know you like half miles. So there you go.
You know, I've never been there, Mason. That could be a fun one to go see.
You guys could go together, except Jessup, bring your umbrella.
Well, I'm gonna bring my rain gear and my hip waders.
I would say I have to decide between 2 half miles because Viking and Huron are racing that Saturday, and I'm leaning towards Viking because usually I make Vikings opener, but we'll see.
Yeah,
but how often do you go to Huron?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is it's a 4-hour drive on a Saturday, and I have Sunday morning obligations.
This is true.
That makes it a little challenging.
And with the rain, it could be longer.
The Lord, you can sleep when you're dead. The Lord will provide.
Well, someone's got to make sure people at home can watch the service. So, unfortunately, I'm needed more than you'd think. Yeah, you guys kind of touched on the racing. A lot of the racing taking place across the region. Obviously, Fiesta and I-94 will be kicking off or continuing their season Friday. Saturday, hopefully, North Central, Ogilvie, and Viking will have their openers, and as well as Huron down in South Dakota. And then Sunday, Casino Speedway is slated to open on Mother's Day, and the Granite City Motor Park is scheduled to open as well. So hopefully plenty of racing to take in throughout this weekend if Mother Nature will cooperate, which is a big question mark. Although I found out today, especially down kind of in the Watertown area, they are dry. So never fear. Rayman is coming to help you out. So we actually have, for the first time in our Track Packers history, we have a fan-submitted question.
Yes.
From our very own friend, Layn of LPT Images, the official track photographer out at the Dakota Speedway, submitted us a question which part of it is probably going to require a driver joining us on the show to kind of explain this, but we can talk up a little bit about it from our vantage point. So basically the part of his question was, what makes drivers change chassis? Or kind of the way I want to talk about it a little bit, just for a little second. What do you think the go-to chassis is right now? So like modifieds, for example, that's probably the biggest thing that we've kind of talked about, because it seems like it goes in waves.
It does. really goes in waves. And Jessup, go ahead
It's
if you want to
very
go first.
trendy. That's what it is.
I would say after Jason Walla's opening weekend, Precision Performance chassis will be the next hot thing.
And I will be honest, like before he explained that, I don't know if he explained it on Saturday or where he said it. I actually thought it was a Rage for a while. Because for a while there was like, because I think Travis Hagen has a Rage, Sean
He
Strahan
does.
has a Rage, Kinsley has a Rage. So there's like a bunch of Rage cars up at the, or no?
He has one, but he raced his lethal on
Okay,
on
That is
Friday.
lethal. Yep. But
Okay,
he has
yeah.
a Rage too. Yep.
I would say for IMCA right now, it's still going to be Rage.
Yes.
IMCA is big in Rage as of right now. It's still pretty big with Rage.
And with
Rage is pretty big.
Wasota,
So, well, but IMCA too, just a bit. Razor's another one that has kind of made a little bit of a comeback, not much, but a little bit from what it was.
Kind of depends
Especially
on the
more
region.
south.
Yeah.
It might be what region you race in when it comes to IMC modifieds, but I would say Rage is probably the top one. But I think Jason Walla literally just hopping in the car. He literally got it like the day before. Hopping in the car, getting 2 wins right off the bat. Yeah, Precision Performance is probably going to catch some eyes to some drivers out there.
And honestly,
Yep.
go ahead, Jessup.
I would say, no, go ahead, John. I'm just going to switch it over to Wasota real quick.
Okay. So I'm going to finish up IMCA then on this side.
Yep,
I
go ahead.
think truly it's kind of that dominant chassis that you definitely see a lot of the top drivers have, more or less, and I don't want to pinpoint an area, but maybe more or less of that Iowa area, because that's kind of the heart of IMCA. It's always been there, Boone, obviously, Marshalltown's there, you got Stewart in there. I mean, there's a lot of really, really big name tracks right around that Iowa area. And definitely within that area, whatever drivers kind of see as what's winning down there is definitely something that has come across as being kind of a hot ticket item for sure. And we've seen it up here. One of the biggest things that we saw here, maybe back, and Becca, this is back when, you and me were just kind of taking over the announcer reins at Dakota Speedway. And even Charlie was still involved very closely with Dakota Speedway at that time, was Jeff Taylor. When Jeff Taylor was huge on the mod tour, you saw a ton of Taylor chassis coming out up here within the Bismarck-Mandan area around, even in Minot. Minot, you saw a ton of them up there too. And now that Jeff is more Shaw-based with the Shaw chassis brand, we see a lot of those still coming back too within the IMCA realms a little bit. So it's very much on what is the top hot ticket item during that time frame, because I feel like a lot of the drivers, some of them will run their chassis for years. They won't change, they'll just run it for years. But several of them, they'll change every couple of years, and they might change chassis brands depending on how their season went. So for instance, and I'm going to pinpoint a couple of drivers here. There's a couple of drivers locally that have had really good seasons, and then they kind of go into a slump for maybe a couple of years. And they're like, you know what? It might be time to change the chassis. I've kind of got this chassis figured out. It's not doing what I want it to do anymore. I want a new exciting challenge or that new toy to play with. And then they'll change chassis. So that's one way that I've seen a lot of it. I actually spoke to, sorry, Justin, I'm kind of taking up some time here, but I actually spoke, this is years back. I was actually on a plane traveling for an audit trip, and I had all the dirt out in front of me. And I was reading all the dirt during that time frame. It was one of the weekly ones that came. It was like in June, somewhere in that range. The guy that was sitting next to me, he was on the other side of the aisle, looked at me and said, "Are you involved with like dirt track racing stuff?" And I said, "I actually am." I said, "I'm an announcer at a couple of tracks and I follow it closely." It's like, that's interesting. He's like, "Where are you guys from?" And I said, "Well, we're from North Dakota." I said, we're down here within work and everything else. And he's like, "I actually am a racer / now chassis builder down here in kind of like the IMCA area with a lot of the mod drivers." And I was like, "Really?" So I asked him, I said, "Well, where are you from?" He's like, he's right next to Iowa on the Iowa-Illinois border. And it was a very interesting conversation because we talked about chassis brands and how the chassis work and everything else. And there was some new chassis development happening back then, which now we know more of as we go forward, obviously within the new chassis realms. Back then that there were several brands of chassis down there in that area that we never really saw in North Dakota, but now we see a ton of them in North Dakota, like Rage chassis, one, that we didn't see a big number of maybe like 10 years ago, somewhere within that range. Same thing for some of the other chassis brands. So yeah, so that was a very interesting conversation, but it's very much, it's fluctuation. It's on how is the season's going, and then what is obviously that hot ticket item.
John, who was it?
I don't remember. I don't remember. It wasn't a really well-known chassis brand at that time by any means. But now they do a lot of chassis development now down there within like the modifieds for like the UMP. They do a ton of those down there in Tennessee and Kentucky in that area.
Interesting.
Longhorn.
So
I
no, but that was
remember
when I
when
got brought up.
side
That was
biter.
just starting
Everyone
by that
had
time.
a side biter. I remember that was hot for like
Yes.
2 years.
Yes.
Looking at Dakota Speedway right now, it is interesting to see. It is a real melting pot of chassis at our track, or it seems like it is, because everyone's got a little of everything, and not everyone, but there's a few drivers that have a few spare cars that may raise a few eyebrows when they do actually get put out on the track. So it's going to be it'll be interesting to see what will be the top dominant chassis at our track and in the area. But it is kind of fascinating how Rage is. I think I can safely say Rage is still probably the dominant and preferred chassis by the majority of the drivers at this moment. Eldorado's good, Vanderbeeks are good, and then Jet, Harris, and a few others, Lethal, and then a couple that we can't say yet that are hidden in a garage. But I think it's really interesting to just see the competitiveness that our area has for each of those chassis.
Yeah.
Just kind of on a Wasota mod area too. I mean, if you look at Wasota stuff, obviously, there's a ton of chassis in there too. But one of the things that you look at back maybe like mid to late 2000 area, kind of like where the Stampede shirt was that I'm wearing right now. The J cars were huge back then. So the J McDonald chassis that were coming out of Fargo were huge. I mean, you looked at those and everybody almost had a J car around the state. It was basically J cars and Shaws that were huge back then. They were huge back when right around that 2000, maybe like 5, 6 area to like maybe even like mid 2000, maybe like 12-ish, 12, 13-ish. And then it started transitioning. And Jessup, now I'm going to turn it over to you because I know you got more details.
Yes, there's really only, well, I can't say really only, but there is a dominant force of Wasota right now, and that is MB Customs, and I'm drawing a blank here.
I was going to say SSR is really
SSRs. Yep, SSRs are the other ones that are sort of prop up.
But right now, there's a stranglehold for late models and modifieds, but it's starting to break a little bit on the modified end. But late models, oh my god! If it's not an MB custom, you're pretty much out by yourself, and there's not a lot that you can bounce information off of with other drivers.
Yeah, I was gonna say like MB Customs, SSRs. There's a couple lethals out there I know in the modifieds, and so yeah, it's really interesting to kind of see the cycles and what people kind of gravitate to. And like you guys mentioned, like I remember growing up like in Minot and just seeing like 10 to 12 Taylor cars. It seemed like, and like they would see the top 5 every single weekend. It's just like, okay, well, this is really dominant right now, and then it shifts like. And you think about guys that like are really good in some like those off chassis or maybe lesser known. Not saying like that GRT isn't well known, but like Travis Hagen for years racked up a bunch of wins in I think it was a 2013 GRT for like 6-7 years before. I don't know if he still has the GRT, but I know he has a Rage. And so yeah, it's really interesting to see the cycle of chassis and how they kind of like ebb and flow with the competition. So I think we'll have to touch this question again. We'll have to get a driver's input because obviously they know more than all of us do on chassis setup and all that. So thanks for the question, Layn. That's a really fun one to talk about from a fan's perspective.
Yeah. And I think even from like a driver's perspective too, sometimes it kind of depends on your relationships with a lot of those chassis owners as well. So and even like maybe sponsor related. I feel like especially when you get into like more of the bigger series, say for instance like USMTS or if you're following like a national championship on the Minnesota side or even on the US RA side. Sometimes it might even be depending on where those sponsors are located at and what type of chassis they're in. But some of those race shops obviously are kind of related to some of those sponsorships as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very good insight from all of you.
So my first early years of dirt track racing, I literally thought Jeff Taylor lived in North Dakota because he raced in Mandan and Nodak so often because he was up here helping all the new customers with their Taylor chassis cars. And I literally thought Jeff Taylor lived here. But
yeah,
that's not the
that
case.
is a very good point. I forgot about that because usually when you see Jeff Taylor on the entry list, it's like, all right, who's battling for second?
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. He used to run a lot of, I mean, him and Spencer Wilson used to be kind of like, really close within the Taylor chassis brands, and they used to go everywhere with their cars, and they were always dominant, no matter where they used to go. So, especially when it got really, really dry slick back
I was
then,
naive, didn't know.
they could just go to the front.
Moving on to the white flag. We can go with wins of the week for our white flag as we display it for the crowd. So, who has up to 2 wins of the week to start with? Becca.
Gotta be quicker than that. All right. My first one of the week goes to Jason Walla because literally he hopped on that brand new IMCA modified chassis and put on a heck of a show at the Dakota Speedway. Clearly must have made some just minor adjustments, went up to the Estevan Motor Speedway, picked up a win there. So 2 wins right off the bat for Jason Walla. That's my first win of the week. Congratulations, Jason Walla. And then my next win of the week goes to John Gartner Jr. because, as Jessup mentioned, we went out to his shop earlier that week, and literally that car was in pieces. And so, it's gotta be quicker than that, Jessup. Anyways, he honestly didn't think he had a chance at even competing for a win on Friday, and he led all 15 laps. Held off some very strong cars who were Bill Hultberg and Derek Appert, and went on to win. So he was very surprised in Victory Lane, and it felt good to see him back in Victory Lane for John Gardner Jr. So congratulations to the Cage Man. And so, those are my wins of the week.
Couple solid wins. Yep, I agree with both of those. There's some pretty clear winners of the week. Jessup, did you have a couple, or do you need a little time after Becca?
No, I'll just keep going because Becca got very predictable, but that's okay. I'll go with our friends north of the border. It's going to be the Estevan Motor Speedway. I think that's a big win for them this past weekend. They finally got to host their American friends, and I think everything went off without a hitch. Well, with a little bit of a hiccup at the beginning, but outside of that, I thought they had a very nice night. I think a lot of people were excited to be back up there and supporting them and seeing their friends. And as John alluded earlier, it's been 3 years, and it doesn't seem like it's been that long, but it has been a long time that we've been able to see our friends up there, and I think that's a really big win for them. I think their upcoming doubleheader is going to be one that Northern North Dakota race fans should at least attempt to go see and take in. And I think that our Canadian friends up there definitely need to go support them. I think it's going to be a real solid grudge match between the Americans and the Canadians, and I think a lot of good fun will be coming from that. And I think that's my first one. Second one, I'm going to just say the Legends class as a whole. Legends are, I know they're not everybody's favorites, but right now they are the hot class. They are getting an amazing car count here. And I know we were the only ones racing. When I say we, I mean the Dakota Speedway. But if you look at it, besides the Compsons, there weren't too many travelers from the Far East. So I think as a whole, that class is going to look really strong this year for North Dakota. And I think you're going to see some really big and large car count numbers once we get to invitational season. But I think also you're going to have some really good races throughout the year as well. You got the Night of Legends. I know, I think it was either Buffalo River or Red River was thinking about copying that idea for one of their own nights. So that'd be kind of cool and a kind of a neat experience for hopefully that the Western guys can maybe go over and support, try to promote, promote traveling and support from track to track. So Legends are my second winner. Great racing. We got to see a lot of new faces up front. I think it was it Noah or Gage, John, that was up front.
Both.
Actually, both were up
Yeah,
front.
they were both.
Who was leading? I can't think of it.
I believe that was Noah.
In the feature was Noah. In the heat
Yep.
race, it was Gage that won on the last lap.
So if we gotta get specific, I think the Madlers look good. They had a really great weekend, so it should be a fun season to see them continue to grow, to see the class grow, and I think there's a lot of fun action that's going to be following them this year. I think the points race you're going to see. I think we'll still see some of the familiar characters up in the top 10, but I think you're going to see probably, give or take, 4 to 5 new faces competing up there every single night. So, or fresh faces would be a good way to explain it.
Yeah, it's going to be full of surprises this season, I think, in the Legend class. So I definitely agree with that as a big win of the week.
Yep.
John, you want me to go next or you want to go?
You can go, Mason, then I'll take it over at the back end.
Okay, so I will go with 2 specifically. I will go with Cody Hatch. Not everyone may know who Cody Hatch is, but he's racing a street stock now. Dominated the pure stocks over the Montevideo, Madison, KRA area, and moved up in the street stocks and finished 3rd in his first race of the season. So very good run for Cody Hatch in that number 9 machine. So shout out to Cody Hatch. And my second win of the week goes to Nate Reinke. Equaled his win total from last season at a track that he's not as familiar at or at the I-94 EMR Speedway. So great job, Nate. He started up front, but honestly, he dominated that race. Lucas Rodin got into second, but he was already gone by like 2 to 3 seconds. And so big shout out to Nate. It must have been either being on my Wednesday night live show or me repping him the week before. So kudos to you, Nate. Go ahead, John.
Okay, so yep, Nate had a great run over there. I'm also going to stick over at I-94 really quick before I head over to Dakota Speedway. I have to give an attaboy to Lee Gross, who won opening night in the Wissota Modifieds over there against a very stout field of modified drivers. I mean, if you look at the top 10, maybe even top 15, maybe even top 20 of that feature event, and it was kind of the who's who of even Wissota 100 week at that event. So you had a lot of top drivers. When you have Mike Stearns deep in the field for a finishing order, there's a lot of talent as well within that. I was going to
say, he almost got lapped, or he might have gotten lapped.
He did. So I mean, that just shows you the talent that was over there. There was a ton of talent within that field. So congratulations to Lee on that feature win to open up his season over there at I-94. The other win of the week, I'm going to come back home here with Dakota Speedway, and I have to give a shout out to Chris Welk Jr. So he was a rookie in the Wissota Street Stock Division last year. He picked up his 8th win on Friday night in a hard-fought battle. I mean, he drove his way to the front to get that heat win over Jeremy Castro on the high side as they were battling side by side. Really good heat race between the two of them. And then he ran top 5 a majority of that feature, and right at the end fell back to 8th. But I mean, still had a very, very, very stout opener at the Dakota Speedway in Mandan. And I think he's going to be one to kind of watch and maybe even compete for his first feature win here in the Wissota Street Stocks in 2023. So congratulations out there to Chris.
Yeah, so good group of winners, guys. I think that's a great way to close episode 11 for season 2. Hopefully this next weekend we can have a lot more racing to talk about as we head down the stretch into the summer with racing officially underway. And so be sure, if you haven't, to like and follow our Facebook page on the Track Packers podcast. Be sure to check out the video, whether on Facebook or YouTube. If you're a listener, Spotify, Google, and Apple is where you can find us. Thank you, as always, to Tyler Hall and Hitch Harness for the support of the podcast. And as we continue the racing season, we hope to see you out there packing the track.